Hi, how you doing? I'm doing great. Today we're doing my May wrap up. I actually read quite a lot of books, so I'm very excited to talk to you about them all, and let's get started with some stats. In total, I read 17 books, which amounts to 6,389 pages read in total, which is an average of 375.82 pages per book and 206.08 pages per day. So those are all great numbers. I read 6 books I physically own, 2 ebooks, 5 galleys from NetGalleys, and 4 library books. For my ratings, we have 1 1 star, 4 2 stars, 6 3 stars, 3 4 stars, 3 5 stars, which amounts to an average rating of 3.17. So that's still way below what I want it to be, but oh well. Then for age range, I read 3 middle grades, 4 young adults, 1 new adult, and 9 adult books. And then for genre, we have 1 graphic novel, 1 non-fiction, 4 historical fictions, 4 fantasies, 2 paranormals, and 5 contemporary novels. The first book that I read this month is Plain Jane and the Mermaid by Vera Brosgol, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to, and it's a galley I got from NetGalley. This is just a cute little graphic novel, and I do think that I am just not the target demographic for this one, because I did not necessarily find anything that won with it, but also didn't really get that invested in it, and I don't think it is that memorable. I keep forgetting that I read this month, just because it just is so out of sight, out of mind for me. Then next I read Know My Name by Chanel Miller, which I gave out 5 stars to. This is a memoir that's been on my radar for a while, and I know it's a very emotionally rough one, so it took me a bit to get to, but I finally did and I absolutely loved it. I just think it was so incredibly well written. Like, when I rate like non-fiction, especially when it comes to memoirs, I'm more so looking at like the writing and stuff like that rather than the story, because that's someone's life. I can't judge that, but I do think this was a very well written memoir. I feel like I was just there with her, and like she did such a great job kind of like pulling you into those emotions and conveying all of that. I thought all of that was really well done. Then next I read We Could Be So Good by Cat Sebastian, which I gave 5 stars to as a galley from NetGalley. This is a really fun historical romance. It's a different setting, because I feel like typically historical romances are like Regency or something. This one is the 1950s, but 1959 and to be specific, and I thought that setting is just so much fun and so different for like an historical fiction, and I was really transported to the time. We also follow 2 people at a like in a newspaper, like working there, and I thought that was also really fun as kind of like the setting. I thought the romance was really cute. I liked the discussions around homophobia and this as well. I feel like that's where a lot of the stakes with the romance came from, with just the homophobia at the time, rather than creating conflict between our 2 main characters, which I also really liked. I thought it was well done. And overall, it's just a very compelling story. Like, I read this in one sitting, I didn't want to put it down. It's just that something felt missing for me, which is why it kept from being a 5 star. Then next I read A Darker Shade of Magic by Schwab, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to. This was a really fun adult fantasy. It's another one that's been on my TBR for such a long time, and was actually on my top of TBR list for this year, so I got to check one of those off, which is always fun. But I thought the world was really interesting in this. I was just captivated by just the inner workings of how this world works, because it kind of is like parallel universes in a way, and I thought just how that worked was really interesting. The magic system was really interesting. I really liked our cast of characters. They were a bit one-dimensional, but it wasn't like too bad. I just think that the plot felt a bit lackluster, and I just wanted more from it. And then next I read City of Ghosts by Schwab, which I also gave 2 to 5 stars to. This is a middle grade kind of paranormal book. It's such a fun read, and honestly I do think that if I was the right age demographic for this book, I would have absolutely loved this. Like, I can definitely imagine like 13-year-old me absolutely eating this up. But as an adult, I just feel like even though I had a lot of fun reading it and was very engaged into the story, I don't know, I feel like this is not one that's gonna stick with me for very long, and it's gonna disappear from my brain someday. But what I particularly liked about this book is just how eerie it is. I do feel like at times when it got into like that ghosty spooky setting, I feel like I was completely like, I was there and I felt it, so that's something I really like. This one takes a little while for the plot to get started, and I wanted that a bit quicker. Then next I read The Ruby Circle by Michelle Mead, which I gave out of 5 stars. So this is the final book in the Bloodline series, and I have had like very mixed opinions on this whole series, but this was a great conclusion to the series. I think it brought all of the different threads that have been woven throughout the series together in a way that works really well, and something I was very nervous about going into this book is that I wouldn't be able to execute that, but it did, and I really like how it was done. I thought it was a very engaging, captivating plot. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time reading it. I read it so quickly. I think this left our characters in such a great place. I absolutely loved that aspect to it. The only reason why this wasn't a 5-star is because when it comes to kind of like that wider plot world implications, I feel like this was just a bit too open-ended, and I just wanted more of a conclusion on that side. And next I read The Long Way Home by Jessa Hastings, which I gave 3 to 5 stars to. This is the 3rd book in the Magnolia Park series, and for this one we're back with Magnolia and BJ, and those two are so exhausting to read from, and this is such a long book as well, and I feel like that's where a lot of my like enjoyment was hindered, the length and how exhausting these characters are, because I felt like it was a very repetitive book and a lot of the same sentiments kept coming up and up, and I don't know, I was just not bored, that's not the right word, but I was just like, can we just hear something else for like a second? Just one chapter and someone else's POV would have saved this for me. I think BJ went through a lot of growth throughout this book, and in between this book and the first book, because in the first book he was just a piece of shit, like the worst kind of human to have ever existed, and in this one he's still not a good person, but I did feel like he is atoning for his actions more, he's holding himself accountable and stuff like that, and that's something I really enjoyed, and I enjoyed that growth, and it also caused for growth between Magnolia and BJ, like in their relationship. I do think these two just like need to learn to talk to each other instead of just getting mad at every single thing that the other person does, and just talk things out. I feel like that would have could at least help this book if they did that, but it is still a very drama-filled, fun read. Then next I read Tunnel of Bones by Schwab, which I gave 3 out of 5 stars to. This is the 2nd book in the Cassidy Blake series, which City of Ghosts is the first one for, and I like this more in some ways than book 1, and also dislike this one in ways than book 1. I feel like book 1 was so good at like building an eerie atmosphere, which I was kind of missing in this one. This one takes place in Paris, and even though I've been in Paris, I felt less transported to this place than in book 1, which took place in Edinburgh, which I've never been, but I did like that we build more on these characters, especially when it comes to Cassidy's best friend Jacob. I feel like we learned a lot about him in this book, which is something I really enjoyed, and on top of that the plot also starts way sooner in this one, and I feel like it's just better built, so in that sense I enjoy it more, but like I was missing a kind of like creepy eeriness from it. And then next I finally read King's Cage by Victoria Aveyard. Sadly enough I gave this 2 to 5 stars. If you've been on the channel you know that this has been on many TBRs. I have reread Red Queen and Glass Sword, the first 2 books in the series, so many times now to be able to get to this book, and I finally did it. I read it and I didn't like it. I thought it just wasn't a good book. It was a filler book, first of all. Not a whole lot happened in this book. I feel like it's a chunker, and like at least half of it could be cut out. Let's be the exact same book. There's just so much of nothing happening in here. I also still think Mare is absolutely insufferable. She went through no growth in this book. She's very stagnant, and she sucks so much. And then we did get another POV in this book, but I would argue that that person is even more insufferable than Maris, so that was not a reprieve at all, and I was not having a great time with this book. And then next we have the biggest surprise of the month, which is A Works of One's Own by Evie Dunmore, which I gave 5 out of 5 stars to. I read book 1 and 3 in this series last month. This is a series of companion historical romances, and even though I was fine reading them, I didn't hate them, I also didn't really love them, so I went into this one expected to have a fine enough time, but I ended up absolutely loving this one. I just really loved our main couple in this one. I thought they were so cute. I love the way the relationship developed throughout this. Everything about them was just top notch, and it made me cry a couple of times. Like just from the cuteness, I was tearing up, so that's something I really enjoyed. I also just like them as characters. I thought they were really fun people to follow, and I had fun with that. I also think the suffragette subplot was way better integrated into this book than it was in 1 and 3. So yeah, I loved everything about this. And then next we have my reread of the month, because apparently I reread a book every month. I've done that so far this year, not intentionally, but my reread this month was King of Pride by Ana Huang, which I gave out of 5 stars to yet again. I don't know why I decided to pick this up. I just kind of wanted to. This is my favorite in this series, and I wanted to reread it, so I did. And I still absolutely loved it. I think Kai and Isabella are such a cute pair. I love them together, and they get together pretty early in this book, and you know, they still go through a lot of stuff. It's not like it's Rainbow and Sunshines, but I feel like in most women's book they develop feelings for each other, and then it takes like a really long time for them to get together, but like they develop feelings for each other, get together, and then things get deeper while they're in a relationship, which I thought was a really fun way to tell the story, because oftentimes in romances, like my biggest complaint is that I wanted more of them as a couple, because like they get together and the book's done, and I really just enjoyed seeing them as a couple kind of facing things together, going through things together, being each other's just like biggest cheerleaders, which I thought was just so great. I absolutely love Isabella's storyline in this book. Then next I read You Should Be So Lucky by Cat Sebastian, which I gave 0 to 5 stars to. This is a companion novel to We Could Be So Good. This takes place in 1960, so a year later, and follows a different couple with, again, one of the journalists from the newspaper, but also a baseball player. And I have a hard time talking about this book because technically there was nothing wrong with this book. The romance was cute, the characters were fun to follow, it was an engaging enough read, but I also think it has some great discussions around grief, but I never really got fully invested in it, and I was really that pulled into it, which is why it kind of ended up falling a bit flat to me and feeling a bit underwhelming. Then next I read Meet Me at the Lake by Carley Fortune, which I give 2 to 5 stars to. For most of this book I was actually quite enjoying it. I wasn't like loving it or liking it that much, but I felt fine about it. I really liked the setup of this book. I thought that was really interesting. I loved the switch between like past and present as well. I thought that was balanced really well. I really liked character and of her personal journey around her mother dying and like dealing with that grief, also her mother's expectations for her, and all of that I thought was really interesting. The romance was a bit underdeveloped but kind of cute, so I didn't really mind that much. They had the cute moments even if they were underdeveloped, but then I feel like the third act conflict just absolutely nuked everything. Like I ended up hating the love interest so much because of how the third act conflict and the resolution of it went down. And next I read The Silence of the Girls by Pat Barker, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to. This one I've heard so many great things about, and I was actually quite curious to check it out. It's not typically what I read, but I was curious about it, so I picked it up from my library, and I don't like it. I don't get the point of it. That's the whole situation, because this is said to be a feminist retelling of like Greek mythology, but there was nothing feminist about this besides the main character. There's no memorable female character in this book. I feel like I generally can't name you a female character in this book besides our main character, just because all of them just are the same archetype and do nothing in the story. And even our main character just does nothing. She just narrates what Achilles and Patroclus are doing. She's doing nothing worth of herself, which just makes me think, okay, so that's the whole setup of your book and you're failing at it tremendously. But okay, there might be another point. No, it's not. We are outside of the action constantly. Nothing really happens in this. I was so bored. I do think there are some interesting ideas in this that I feel like could have been expanded on a bit better, which is why this wasn't a 1 star, because there were some nuggets in there that I liked, and it was a very quick read and the writing was decent. It just a whole lot of nothing. And then next I read Play In For Keeps by Jennifer Dugan, which I gave 1 of 5 stars to, the guy I got from NetGalley. You know, Jennifer Dugan might not be for me because this is the second book I've read by her, and this is the second 1 star I've given her. Like I did not like this book. I thought the romance was just extremely underdeveloped. Like generally I feel like there's a massive part of this book cut out in which the relationship development happens. That jump scared me. There is such a big part of this book that just is skipped, of these characters' romance being developed, and then so much of the conflict on this book and like the tension of it is built on the feelings these two characters have for each other. But like I don't buy it, because you skip the whole development. And then I don't know, it read very toxic because of that, very codependent because of that. And I feel like if the relationship would just develop better and you understood their feelings better, I feel like that could have solved a few things, but in this case that wasn't the case. Then next I read A Strange Hymm by Laura Thalassa, which I gave 2 to 5 stars to. This was actually also a big surprise. It's 3 stars, still a decent read, but I remember like not really liking the first book in the series that much. I liked it fine enough to continue, obviously, but I wasn't in love with it. But this one I had so much fun while reading. I still don't think it's a good book because I despise the romance. This is a fantasy romance book, and the romance in this is just one massive red flag. The X are everywhere. But when it comes to the plot, I actually think that's really interesting, and the world is also really interesting, the magic really interesting. And then lastly, I read finally Fitz by Marisa Kanter, which I gave 5 stars to the galley from that galley. This, again, not a surprise, not but I didn't really have that much expectations for this book. I thought it was just going to be a fun YA contemporary, and it was. I had so much fun while reading it. Like, I didn't love it. I definitely had some issues with it. But if you want a really fun, warm, fake dating, discovering yourself, if you don't mind a character that's kind of a mess, because Fitz is really a mess. And at points in this book, it does get annoying, but she does go through a lot of growth through the novel, and I really like the discussions like surrounding like just perfectionism, and especially surrounding her art. She's really into fashion and stuff like that, and her relationship with her sisters is also a bit like messy when it comes to this book. And I really loved how all of that just was brought out in the open, resolved, and worked on, and I really liked that. I thought the romance was really adorable as well. Like, it's childhood friends, and like they haven't seen each other for like 10 years because he moved away, and now they reconnect and they do a whole fake dating situation, and it's adorable. I love it so much. They generally have so many great genuine moments together, even if it is fake dating, and I had such a blast reading this. I had this in one day. That's it for today. These 17 books I read in May. Like I said, a great reading month. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if you had any of these books, what you thought of them, just some of the books you read in May, and hopefully I'll see you next time.